Good evening. Tonight I just wanted to say a little bit about one of my favorite guitar players, and that is Dickie Betts, born in 1943. And I want to say a little bit about his role in the Allman Brothers because it's been 20 years since he was in the Allman Brothers. Of course, Greg Allman passed away, in 2017, I believe. But he hasn't been in the Allman Brothers for 20 years, but he's an integral part of that band, and I think he added an element to that band that made them what they became. And I think that showed itself over time by the early mid 70s, an element that he added to the band that wasn't necessarily there in the beginning, as good as they were right out of the gate. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Dickie Betts, one of my favorite guitar players, and just say a little bit about why I think he was such an important part of that awesome band, the Allman Brothers. You know, the Allman Brothers Band formed down there in Florida in the late 60s. I think Dickie Betts and Barry Oakley were playing in one band, and Greg and Dwayne kind of had another one, and they kind of joined forces at some point. You know, these things kind of happen organically with so many great bands. Some of the great players kind of aligned, the stars kind of aligned, some of the other players kind of drifted off. And that became the Allman Brothers Band, and they were a great band. Their first album came out in 1969, and as great an album as it is, and it is a great album, it's primarily a blues rock album. It doesn't have some of the characteristics that the Allman Brothers would later be associated with. A lot of the album is actually in the key of A. It's got Whipping Post, it's got Black-Hearted Woman, Trouble No More. It's got that super duper good blues song, Don't Want You No More, and It's Not My Cross to Bear. But those are all hard blues songs. Great guitar. It's a great record. It shows Greg's vocals right out of the gate were just terrific. But you know what it doesn't have is as much of the influence of Dickie Betts. It is kind of a Greg and Dwayne album, and I think as Dickie kind of seasoned in his role in the band, I guess maybe after the tragic death of Dwayne in 1971, but even on the second album before that, Dickie's influence was coming into that band and adding an element that I think made them transcend just being a great blues rock band. He is a really critical part, and that influence came out in the second album. As good as the first album was, the second album was a continuation of that, just as good, but it did add some new elements, I think, and those came from Dickie Betts, especially in the form of two songs. One is In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, which kind of introduced kind of smoky jazz quality, a lot of those diminished chord runs that Dickie was so good at. And the other one was a song, actually a happy song in a major key, which was kind of new for the Allman Brothers at that time, and that's Revival, you know, a great song. But it was a great guitar song, Southern rock. It wasn't a deviation from, you know, it wasn't anything that would alienate anybody. It was right in their sweet spot. But it was in a major key, it was happy. So when you put those two songs together, that kind of jazz-flavored Latin In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, and then Revival, which was a happy kind of kind of southern, almost like camp meeting type song, you really added a new element, and that was the Dickie Betts album element. And that of course, those qualities came out even more on Eat a Peach. But Blue Sky is another song that's happy in a major key. And that might sound like a little thing, but it's actually a big thing, because that gave it that kind of hippie, outdoors, sunny, you know, I heard the Grateful Dead once say there's something special about an outdoor concert in the daytime. And I think it was Phil Lesh said that his favorite kind of Dead show was outdoors in the daytime. And when I think of Blue Sky, that's what I think, just a outdoor, sunny day, happy rock and roll. Not, you know, my baby left me, I'm going to go get drunk or something. And but that Blue Sky was a really important song. And then he followed it up after Duane's death. He took on an even more direct leadership role and took over the guitar duties. And that, of course, produced some really great classics on the album Brothers and Sisters. The band could have broken up then, or just kind of drifted off. You have such a major catastrophe with Duane's horrible death, tragic death in it. And but on Brothers and Sisters, Duane kind of stepped in, and he really added a lot of great songs. And again, they have a different flavor. Southbound, Jessica, Ramblin' Man, of course, was a huge hit, and Pony Boy, which is another one that you know, had that kind of old kind of country blues influence. And those were really cool songs. And again, they weren't anything very different. It wasn't like he was taking the band off in a different direction, but he was adding new styles, and especially I think a happier feeling on a lot of those songs. And when you coupled that with the kind of grit of Greg, you just had a great combination. And that was the band, I think, that kind of evolved into being the great jam band that everybody associates the Allman Brothers with today. From being kind of a really good blues rock band, they became a jam band. And it was that combination of all that kind of heavy blues they played, but also some of those just kind of breezy, sunny, happy, melodic songs. That was Dickie Betts. And even after he left the band, those were always a critical part of the Allman Brothers. So Dickie Betts really made an enormous contribution. The Allman Brothers Band reformed in 1989 with Dickie Betts. I actually saw them a couple times. I actually saw them once, maybe even twice, but once in their kind of original incarnation, the classic period. But then I saw them, in the late 80s or early 90s a couple times with Dickie Betts. They were great. But he was having some personal problems. And I just want to say a little bit about him being kicked out of the band. Dickie Betts was kicked out of the Allman Brothers Band in the year 2000. And he was having some personal problems. Now, I have a lot of respect for Greg Allman, and so this is not a knock. I guess I'm seeing sort of the humor of an unfortunate situation. But he was kicked out of the band for partying too much. Now, when you get kicked out of the Allman Brothers Band for partying too much, you're doing some partying. I mean, if you get that's right up there with the Keith Richards intervention on Graham Parsons. When Keith Richards is involved in an intervention, a drug intervention, you just call the Undertaker, you're done. So Dickie, he must have been doing some pretty heavy partying if he got kicked out of the Allman Brothers Band in 2000. But I'm being kind of humorous. It's actually not that funny. It's not funny when people struggle, or I don't know what was going on with them personally. And I don't think he and Greg got along that well after that. He did go to Greg's funeral, which was nice to see. And there was a picture of him there someone took standing by a tree. But like I said, if you get kicked out of the Allman Brothers for drinking too much, buddy, you're drinking a lot. If the Allman Brothers think you're partying too much, you're definitely the adult dose. So, the band went on to, with Derek Trucks, and then they had Warren Haynes, who was, I think, originally in Dickie Betts' bands, but he was kind of replaced by Derek Trucks. I've often wondered if they kind of wanted to replace him with Derek Trucks, and were looking for a reason to do it. And that was a great band. I never did see that band. But you just can't take anything ever away from Dickie Betts, and I especially think it's so important to appreciate the jazz influences he offered to that band, and the major key influences which were not in the too present in some of the original Allman Brothers albums. That Dickie Betts, that bright, happy guitar playing that he did, which was just so wonderful. Some of those brilliant solos like Jessica, Ramblin' Man, Blue Sky, it's just such nice guitar playing. And that became a critical ingredient in the Allman Brothers sound. I don't think they would have been around in 2000 for Dickie Betts to get kicked out of if he hadn't added that element. They would have been a hard rock band that probably would have drifted off into the bar circuit as the 80s kind of went on. And instead they had that kind of eclectic sound, that kind of hippie jazz, blues, and country sound that had all those elements in it. And that's, I think, what kept them viable all these years. And even after Dickie Betts wasn't in the band, I think his legacy was what kept them going. And I know they still played a lot of his songs on stage, but even just the Allman Brothers sound, a great band, and the Allman Brothers are a great band, it develops its own sound. They're not a cover band anymore. They have their own sound and their own catalog, and Dickie Betts was such an important part of that. I think an equal part with Greg. Really can't take anything away from Dickie Betts. So I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on Dickie Betts, and I hope he's doing well. You know, it kind of stinks that some of these people, you think we might not ever get to see them play again, or if we do, you know, if you get a chance to go, if you really wanted to see them, because some of these people, you know, it won't be playing that much any longer. And but he's an awesome guitar player, and he added that an element to the Allman Brothers sound that was really needed, and he turned them in from just being a really good blues band into a really eclectic but still southern rock hippie band. They never, you know, he never was trying to push them in some direction that was commercial or something that didn't fit them, but he did add other musical elements that are absolutely critical in understanding the Allman Brothers' appeal all these years later, 50 years later. Hats off to Dickie Betts.